The best way to optimize, especially for new entrepreneurs, but this holds true no matter what size business I've ever been in. Write down everything you hate about your job. And that's where you start. Because when you dislike something, you do it slower. There's a reason why you dislike it, because it's usually uncomfortable. For new entrepreneurs, it's usually the thing you suck at.
Attempting to simplify the complexities of entrepreneurship and what makes for a good life. This podcast is riddled with questions, ideas, philosophical food for thought, tangible takeaways, and honest stories that highlight one man's journey. My name's Evan Shank. Welcome to the podcast, Which Way Now? What's going on, Which Way Now Nation? Welcome to another episode. This is a cool one. I know I say that every time, but man, these things just keep getting better and better. And this guy that I've got with us today, he's got a cool story I'm excited to share with you. So let me tell you a little bit about him. He created his first manufacturing company with just $600 at 15 years old. He now owns and operates the last standing Made in America factories and has hatched a plan to give back the factories and some of his wealth to the American workers. Co-founding the company Mosaic and becoming CEO, his talents are far beyond running the company, with duties touching conceptual development, engineering, and deployment. His emphasis on Made in America is a driving force for how the various companies he's co-founded operate. He's also the CSO of MRCA, which is a private investment firm that invests in established U.S. manufacturing companies. Outside of wearing all of these hats, which he has many, this man runs a branch with his wife in Texas. He's riding dirt bikes, gotta love the dirt bikes, plays volleyball, enjoys a good whiskey tasting, and believe it or not, he's a nationally ranked wrestler. His name is Jason Azevedo, and he is the man of the hour today on the Which Way Now podcast. What's up, Jason? How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me, Evan. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, this is good. This is good. So we are here recording on a Friday. Have you had a good week? You feeling energized? I know you had a lot of other podcast interviews, things like that lined up this week. You still got some in the tank for us?
I'm looking forward to talking. It's always fun, and coming off of a really solid week, it's exciting.
Heck yeah. Love it. I love the energy. And we had the chance to talk a couple weeks ago on the phone and just kind of get to know each other, see if we could put together a great episode for our audience here. And I really just want to, before anything else, give you the floor to give us a bit of your backstory. When we had talked on the phone, you started this apparel company, and it was kind of like out of your backpack. And it was like, it's an interesting thing. You found a problem. You're very entrepreneurial. You found a problem. You created a solution, and look where you are now, doing all sorts of stuff. So tell us the inception story of Jason and how you got to where you are.
Yeah, I'll kind of take you down the story. It takes a couple different paths. So I'll set the stage. It is February of 2007. I decide with my brother, we are going to start an apparel manufacturing company. And we've got $600 to our name. I'm 15 years old. He's 20. We decide, okay, we're doing this. And at a parallel path, my father had worked in a factory my whole life, and 29 years at the same company. In the coming up to 2007, 2008, he had gotten laid off 7 or 8 times with changes in ownership, management that was frankly at the throats of the employees, really a toxic environment. And they were one of the most profitable plants in the country for the company he worked for. But they kept on having problems there because, frankly, they were treating their people horribly. So here we are. We're starting a manufacturing company. Our father works in a manufacturing company, and we make a promise to ourselves, we're never going to be like that. And we want our front of house and our people and our floor people to be in sync and enjoy it and feel fulfilled and have a great job. So we go back to the fact it's February of 2007. Right as our business is starting, things getting going, we are pushing forward. We start buying equipment. Here comes the fall of 2007 and the beginning of 2008. And everyone knows what just suddenly happens to all markets. And we had a brand new business. We were just getting going. And every person around us is telling us, don't do this. This is a horrible time to start a business. You guys are crazy. Definitely don't do it in manufacturing because that's a horrible industry. And they're just, one of the interesting things is every person saying this is people who've actually never done anything in the business world in their lives. They've worked for companies. No entrepreneur is telling you this. So we start taking this in and we're this is a bad idea. Don't start a business now. Definitely don't start a manufacturing business now. And someone said something to us that completely snapped us out of it. You're going to lose everything you have. I'm 15 years old. I have $600. This person is telling me I'm going to lose everything I have. I don't have anything. And it
feels like
suddenly.
Everything too, kind of at that moment.
Exactly. But it clicked in that moment that what every person is telling us is their own personal insecurities, their reasons why they've never started a business, their fears, and we're taking them as if they're our own. So we instantly snap and go, wait, let's go think of people and let's go look at other downturns in markets. What has happened there? Well, you start realizing all the greatest companies in history have started during downturns because the barrier to entry is lower and there's more clients floating in the ether. So we pivoted and started using it to our benefit, that equipment was now selling for pennies on the dollar. The biggest customers in the country for our industry at the time, a lot of them had been working with these large conglomerates who end up having to go bankrupt because of cash flow problems in 2008. So they still had tons of clients. They just didn't have enough clients to cover their overhead. So now you've got these amazing giant clients floating in the ether. Mm-hmm. So we just said, okay, we'll take you and
opportunity.
And we just start picking them up.
Well, and it's weird too, because it's like, it's an interesting thing because we have to really set our emotions aside, but it's that whole Warren Buffett thing, I think, was the one that's like, be greedy when other people are fearful and fearful when other people are greedy. And as we see this turbulence in markets, and it's kind of rocky even right now here in summer of 2022, there's a cyclical pattern to all of this stuff. And it is really challenging even for the successful entrepreneurs and business owners to be able to set aside their emotions at certain moments and act based off of something that's a little bit more objective and what seems to be just fundamentally true.
I always look at it as you're not setting your emotions aside, because your emotions and your gut are one of the most powerful things you have in business. It's giving them equal opportunity with the facts and realizing that facts aren't always facts. Oh, the markets are horrible. That's not ever true. There's never a time that every single market in the world is horrible. It's, hey, the manufacturing, the industrials market, the airline industry might be horrible.
Right.
But there's still going to be winners because the money's going somewhere.
Right.
So, I mean, perfect example. Every time the economy turns down really bad, alcohol sales skyrocket. So there's
funny enough.
Yeah. So there, 2008, every industry's crying about bloodshed, but one industry very quietly put up the highest profits they ever had, and that was the entertainment industry, because people were looking for escapes. Right. So it's really understanding that you just balance. Hey, there's always opportunity. You just need to find where that is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just being a creative thinker. And that's something, I mean, here with the audience base of just budding entrepreneurs, want to be entrepreneurs, people just that are, they have that spirit within them. Keeping your creative brain alive to be able to kind of see what may be out there that's not necessarily being talked about is a huge thing. There's opportunities in the cracks and corners of life at any given moment. And I think that's so wise the way you said it, that when everything is kind of just going to hell in a handbasket, there's spots where it's not. It's never full total bad. There's a good in all of it, or you can find it if you can, apply yourself towards that.
Years ago, a mentor of mine said the most important reason to keep your head up is because when everybody else puts theirs down, the people with their heads up are still looking for people. And it's rung true, because when things like, we're entering into an interesting market right now. And when things are going this path, the people who are standing up tall see each other, and you go, ooh, that guy over there he's in the manufacturing industry. What's going on in your industry? Well, actually, it's up right now, but we don't really want to brag about it because we feel bad to everybody else, but we're seeing some of the best years we've ever seen. Yeah. And you start meeting these people, and all of a sudden you start finding those nooks and crannies like you talked about. They're there, but it's because their heads are up, and they're still talking about, hey, we're going here, and everyone else's heads down.
Yeah. Now, do you think, just kind of in that idea, for the people that have their heads up, what's the best way to go about it? Because sometimes you hear kind of quotes around the idea of, like, if you have something great, don't be too loud about it, or somebody might copy it or do whatever. So, like, if you're doing really well and everybody else is kind of down, is it a benefit or more risk to kind of proudly say, hey, we are doing well? Is there what's going on through successful people's minds in those moments? Are they intentionally being quiet?
In business and in life, for that matter, you should always share as much as you can. There are things you can't. I mean, every business has its certain trade secrets. It's, hey, like with MRCA, we acquire legacy US manufacturing companies. I tell everybody what I'm seeing in the market, but if you ask me what acquisitions I'm currently working on, I will never tell you until the paperwork's signed, because I've done the work to find out that that's a good one. Now, I will tell you, hey, I'm liking these industries, or I'm liking this sector. So I think it's important to share information. I think when you share information, frankly, you get information back. If you see somebody holding their cards 100% of the time, you don't share with them as much. So we've always balanced that, where there is some proprietary stuff. Hey, I can't tell you every single thing that's happening every day.
Right.
But I'm always going to share with you, like, I'm a huge fan in manufacturing right now of the industrials market, be it like John Deere tractors, or I was talking to someone the other day. I want to make park benches, lots of park benches. And they're like, why? I'm like, well, because there's a $1.4 trillion infrastructure bill that has to be spent. I want things that have to be American made in that bill. So it's understanding that you can share the information, and then, of course, keep a couple things to yourself.
Yeah. Well, I really like that you say that, and that's my personal belief as well. And it's been a challenge for me in my pursuit at just trying to be a good man, a father, a husband, an entrepreneur, all of these things that I wear proudly as a title of me. It can be a challenge sometimes to see the greater good to sharing certain things, especially when you're just fed wrong information. Like when I had brought it up earlier, like something just felt wrong about telling people, like, oh, keep everything under wraps all the time. I think, yeah, it totally depends. So it's not one of those things where there's an ultimate yes or an ultimate no. It's not black or white. It's a very gray matter. But I think the more that we prioritize sharing information that's good for people in general and helps us, like, it rises the tide for all of us, that's great. And it made me think, while you were saying all that, about, like, you watch those shows, or at least I do, where they take the camera crew back into the back of the kitchen of this really nice restaurant or whatever, and they're like opening all the doors and showing them into the fridge and the freezer and their systems that they have in place and how they organize things. And then they're like, okay, tell us about that sauce. And they're like, can't tell you about the sauce, but hey, what we can say is there's, like, there's sugar in it, or, that's all we're going to tell you. And it's like, okay, all right, fair enough. And I think that curiosity factor kind of keeps everybody kind of hanging on to the special recipe. Why is KFC so crispy, or whatever it is, things like that. So I just think that's really good to highlight and talk about, because there's a lot of misinformation around people just kind of huddling together and you start to isolate yourself with the information and knowledge that you have. And it ends up hurting not only yourself, but the opportunity for others to be able to grow out of it as well.
Through my career, I mean, I started so young that no matter what, I was the youngest guy in the room. And what I started to realize is the people most willing to share the most information are people nearing retirement age. And unfortunately, it's the people that people listen to the least because, oh, they're not up to speed with this. So we've found great value in talking to people who are like, hey, I've got like 4 years left in this, so I don't care. Here's everything. You can't execute on that in time anyway, so have fun.
Right.
And so really also knowing where to look for those people that are just going to open up to 100%. And that there's huge value in that.
There really is. There really is. And there's not only the value in what they're sharing, but just being able to look at these elders in front of us, these mentors that are out there, these giants that we can stand on their shoulders and say like, hey, I can emulate that type of behavior, and it's paid off in dividends for them, so the same way can be true for me too. And you can kind of steal that play out of their playbook, so to speak. I want to continue to take our conversation towards something that I know you're just a wild expert in, and I know you could go on and on about it. And I think this is a great chance for us to talk about these two big buzzwords, systems and processes. In manufacturing, I can understand from outside looking in and I will plead the ignorance card on this. There's so much that I could be schooled up on in just the manufacturing industry, just in general. But systems and processes are huge. Yeah. Like, for instance, like my dad, he works for a corporate window manufacturing company, and he is one of he's on the education side of things, helps train the dealers and the salesmen on how to sell the products. But the way that their company is set up, all of the corporate level, executive level, office job type people are in the same building as the manufacturing floor. And it's actually kind of like a mezzanine to everything. So they are in the throes of what's happening on the manufacturing floor. And they actually force everybody to go through the process of learning all of the steps it takes to create a window, and how they keep inventory, and how to project sales into the future, and the lead time on that, and the raw materials that they're going to need. And there's, packaging and shipping and account management. There's so much to it. And I think it's really cool because their philosophy is get everybody involved so they can see all elements and aspects of the business, which I believe you subscribe to that type of philosophy as well to a large degree. These things can't happen or get big and scale and provide job opportunities and wealth to many people. That can't happen unless you have really locked in systems and processes. Is that true?
It's very true. And touching on your making sure that the front of house knows the manufacturing floor, we are actually running an experiment right now. We just shifted one of the plants that the entire office, front of house, whatever you want to call them, actually now sits on the manufacturing floor. This is bookkeeping. This is engineering. That we're just trying the theory, because we've always been all about you got to be in it. You got to understand it. You got to be part of it. And we decided, you know what? Let's go further. Let's just try putting them actually in it, so that from their desk, they can see the machinery and hear it and feel it. And people are forced to talk to each other because they're right next to each other. So that we believe in it at that level where we're going, we push the lever even harder at one of the facilities as a test to see what it is. And interestingly enough, we thought we were going to get a lot of pushback from the office, and they were like, no, we kind of like this. Like we get real-time data on how our projects are going, and this and that. We're like, okay, so let's see how this goes. But yeah, on the systems side, it is, I mean, that's the name of the game. It is you systemizing and getting your process down. I'll take an example we did the other day with an employee. And this employee, every time the machine would cycle, he'd walk 3 to 4 feet. And this machine cycles very quickly. Oh, and he was kind of doing this pivot back and forth. So we have overhead cameras, and we decided, hey, we need to speed up. And an old school mentality is going to be, well, then the person needs to work faster. that's not scalable. You can't just keep on telling people work faster, work faster, work faster. It just doesn't work. So we take these big screens and these overhead cameras, and we take video for 8 hours, and we'll speed it up, slow it down, and we look like John Madden with markers on top of the screens, and you got people sitting there going, okay, well, look, he moves 3 feet. What if we could find a way that he never moves his footing? Oh, well, that would save him a tenth of a second every time. Oh, cool. And it makes him walk a mile less each day. Okay, well, then do this. And then you bring the teams together and go, hey, I just saved you a mile a day. Cool. Now everyone's excited because like, I don't want to do a mile either. So you start layering these, but it all starts on that base concept of you got to get your process down and lock it down.
Yeah. Yeah, it is really funny how once you start to spin up the scale of something that you repeat so much, and using the example of somebody out on the floor, maybe it's just moving the material from here over to here and then starting the machine or whatever. It's like, well, maybe we've got the floor space, we can just move the table and the machine closer together, and now they can pivot back and forth. And holy crap, they're much happier, because it's less steps for them. There's less waiting around. They can just kind of get into their routine with it a little bit better. And then the output obviously is helping everybody in the company, all the way through, because it takes a village to do these types of things, especially just with how complex it can be to build certain products. And, from step 1 to step 5,002, however many it takes, you optimizing a little bit, it always pays off.
It's the concept of compounding interest. Is those little things, while they seem minute, when you add them up at a machine cycling 5,000-6,000 times a day, and then you multiply that by, well, there's 8 machines, and then all that little interest starts building up, and suddenly you've made everyone's life exponentially better, and you've added this huge profit margin. So it's really looking at those kind of things to get these little wins that add up like crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And the name is efficiency, and working smarter, not harder, and just kind of looking at everything through the lens of that. Where can we optimize? And I think it's really interesting too. There's a couple big buzzwords I'm going to throw out there, and maybe we can kind of start putting them in their place. First of all, I want to dig into like systems and processes and compare and contrast them. How do they work together? Because I think those words get thrown around a lot. And then I think there's also this other concept of, especially for like early entrepreneurs, or even more so those that are like the solopreneur, they're kind of doing everything by themselves. They want to optimize. There's a lot of like, how can I optimize this? And it's like, well, sometimes the first thing is like, maybe track your time or do something. You need to start figuring out your system or the process. And it's like, well, there are steps before we can start to fine tune and really take that last quarter turn of the screw on this thing that you're doing, right? So let's look at, first of all, systems and processes, kind of school us up on those terms, and then the idea of optimization and where those 3 things kind of fit together, make it make sense for all of us.
Everyone has their own definition of these buzzwords. We try to avoid buzzwords as much as we can, but on systems, it's the functionality of what you're doing. When do breaks happen? How does payroll process? How does clocking in work? How does that, all these functions, like, why are they doing it and how do they get to where they're going? Process is exactly how you do it. And that is, your systems are what's going to keep the thing on, but the functionality is the process. And that's where you can really get into pinpointing and tightening. So, hey, the system is the payroll clocks. They are going to get that data to accounting. The process might be, hey, let's stagger the clock in times for different sectors in the plant so that I don't have 5 to 10 minutes wasted at the clocks because I've got a line trying to clock in. and finding that process is how you actually execute and really dive into the minutia of, hey, if every zone checks in 5 minutes off of the other one, now I don't have a line. I'm not paying people to stand around for 10 minutes. Yeah. Which sounds minuscule, but really it's actually a big chunk of the day because you figure they got to do that when they clock out too.
Yep.
So that's really what you're looking for.
So it's kind of like the system is the larger thing, and then there's processes within that support the system that you're creating and trying to tighten up.
Yeah, the system is what needs to happen. It's what something needs to happen. You have to get payroll processed. You have to get something off the dock. So there's a system. Now there's going to be a ton of processes in that system. Oftentimes a process is going to come down to an individual or a very small cell. Okay, so Tommy and Jane, they're in their work cell. And when they're working, they're putting out this widget and they need to clock in and they need to do this, need to do that. The system is hey, here's where we're going with it. It's going to be a lot broader. The processes you want to get down to as the smallest module you physically can and dictate how the exact functionality of it. Then we get into the concept of optimization. The best way to optimize, especially for new entrepreneurs, but this holds true no matter what size business I've ever been in. Write down everything you hate about your job. And that's where you start. Because when you dislike something, you do it slower. There's a reason why you dislike it because it's usually uncomfortable. For new entrepreneurs, it's usually the thing you suck at because you don't want to do the amount of like graphic designers that do their own QuickBooks. And it's like, I got to do billing. I hate billing. And it's like, pay an online person, go to Upwork, go get an account or something. Have them do it. They're going to do it faster. They're going to do it better. And you go do the things that make you money. So that is where, if you're looking to optimize pain, get rid of pain first. That is, if you know, at the end of every day, I got to do billings. You start dreading it. So then the end of your day slows down. That last thing you're designing normally would have taken 30 minutes, but the second it's done, you got to do billing. So, this only took me 45 minutes today. Like I've seen all of this and I've done it myself.
Right.
So we go into a manufacturing plant. When we go into a plant, the very first thing we do is we just watch and talk to people for usually 3 to 6 months. I just want to understand how things work, what sucks. And I'm trying to find things that people hate. Oh, well, what is going on here? Oh, I got to go inside that pipe and weld it. I wish we didn't do these jobs. Yeah. Or the other question of you watch somebody do something and they're clearly struggling. Why do you do it like that? That's the way we do it. And as soon as you hear that's the way we do it, another really good time to see if you can optimize it. That means it's been done that way for so long, right, that nobody even knows why anymore.
It's so funny. That is like, and it happens everywhere. There's the whole thing, the story of like the mother that's cooking like a Christmas ham for the family, and their little kid says, "Why do you cut off the ends of the ham?" And the mom goes, "Well, that's what grandma did." And then, grandma fortunately was still around in this story. And so she went and asking her mom, who was grandma, said, "So why did you always cut off the ends of the ham? Does it help? Does it like hold the juice in better or allow flavor to penetrate?" And she's like, "No, I just didn't have a tray big enough to hold the whole ham. So I had to cut the ends off just so that I could get it into the oven." And she's like, "Oh," it's like, wow, okay, well, that explains that, I guess. It happens everywhere.
Yeah, we see it all the time. It is especially because we buy legacy companies, usually talking second, third generation. And it legitimately, there'll be like a Folgers can on top of a shelf. And we'll go through, what's up with the Folgers can? Oh, that's where we store bolts. What are the bolts for? Oh, they're for a machine. Okay. What machine? I don't remember. Oh, we sold that machine 25 years ago.
Oh, man.
And you're just like, okay. But every person in the plant knew that the Folgers can is where the bolts for the machine were stored. And nobody ever asked what machine.
Right. Well, and that's what I think is really interesting, especially, and it's sad more than anything, honestly, especially when we're talking larger companies and everybody has a very defined role and title, and they start to identify with that. Many of those workers that are providing tons of value to the end result at the end of the day, the company itself, a lot of times it doesn't seem like they're empowered to think outside of the box or even just think critically. And it's more of, and I don't shame the person themselves. I shame or find fault with the leadership that's not encouraging them to be an integral part of the process of making this as good as possible. Let's get rid of the stuff that sucks if we can. How can we make it less sucky? How can we make this thing that takes way too long faster? And then incentivize them along the way, bring them into that conversation, allow them to be a part of it. And there's emotional equity that's involved in that. And you start to see performance output that it skyrockets. It almost unanimously. It almost always happens that way. And they stick around longer.
Well, and you look at the best manufacturing plants in existence right now. They're all doing that. It's incredibly, incredibly important to make sure that you've got a very cohesive conversation going on what you're fixing and what you're not. The ones that are hurting, they're all the ones that are, no, here's the process, follow the process. But there's also another part of that. You must accept the fact you're going to break things. So I watch this with plants all the time where they're so afraid that a change is going to take away production for a week, 2 weeks, that they can't risk making the change. There are the best ones, and what we try to do is be able to actually isolate lines and go, hey, the regular teams run here. I'm going to build a red team over here, and we're going to try this weird thing. Let's just see if it works. And then if it works, we go back and go, great, I now have a team of experts to go show the other teams how to do it. And if you can use that model, it works really well. A lot of people get very afraid of it's all or nothing. And it's, well, if I'm going to make this change, then I want all the lines to change because they're all going to run better. Yeah, okay, but now you're adding risk. So let's take a random group of people that are from all sorts of different lines. We're going to go try this weird, awkward thing. I'll give you an example. We have a product that we build in one of the California plants, and it's a lighting product. And we had 14 people on an assembly line assembling these lights. And I get it. My brother calls me. He goes, I have an idea, Jason. I want to build them with 2 people. I'm like, okay, you're going to take 14 people. You're going to use 2. Sure.
Here we go.
Explain. And he goes, well, here's my problem. We only have one production line for this group. If one person calls out sick, that entire line's messed up. So I want to slow everyone down a little bit and have them build them in cells of only 2 people. And they're now going to put out a product every 20 minutes out of 2 people. So we took 2 people, left the production line running, took 2 people who had basically never done the job before, and go, okay, we're going to build this little cell, and you're going to build this. We're going to show you how to do it. First product took like 2 hours to build. It was not pretty. About a week later, they start picking up, and it starts going. Now, 4 cells of 2 people puts out consistently twice as much as 14 people used to. So, wow. But it was a crazy idea. We had people throughout that building going, your math will never work. It's physically impossible. And we're like, but you know what? What cost is it really? 2 people for a week? Okay. I mean, that we're going to be able to go test this out. And I think a lot of people are afraid to do tests like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what you were saying earlier about this, like all or nothing mentality, we either keep everything the same because it's, if nothing else, predictable. Whether we like what that predictable outcome is or not is kind of even beside the point. They're either on that side where, it's like, let's keep everything the same. But if we're going to change it, we got to really go for it. And it's like, well, the whole balls to the wall mentality is like, cool in some senses, like on certain movies that you go and see in the theaters where they just like throw caution in the wind and jump off the mountain or whatever, like cool. But like you were saying, I mean, this is business and we have to find a way to continue to move the ball down the field, so to speak.
Yeah.
And get ourselves towards the ideal that we're working for, that we're chasing towards, these goals that we have. And we're not going to do that staying the same. It's not good for business. It's not good for individuals. Staying the same. I've always heard this thing where it's like, you never stay in one place. You're either moving forward or you're moving backward, but everything is in motion at all times.
Yeah.
And so to keep your Folgers can of bolts, to keep your Folgers can of bolts means you're backsliding, baby. That's what that means. So it's an interesting thing that's worth mentioning, and it's a good reminder for me, and I'm sure the audience listening here today. I want to pivot the conversation into more of your area of expertise and start talking manufacturing specifically, as if we haven't already, but even more so. Kind of this, let me start, and like I said, I totally plead ignorance, so let me just, I'll come off of my limited understanding here, and we'll see how you can school me up, but overseas manufacturing, American manufacturing, obviously made in America, from my perspective, I think, okay, number one, that's cool because I'm in America. It's cool to see things made in America. In theory, it gives us more jobs. There's more opportunities. It stimulates the economy. It's good. But then I also hear, oh, well, it's expensive because you can get cheap labor overseas or whatever it is. And then you start doing like taxes and what's going on with international stuff versus doing it here. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, let's just go the path of least resistance and hire out a company in China and they're going to handle all of our stuff or whatever. Like it seems cool, like American made, heck yeah. But then it doesn't seem viable in a lot of cases. But once again, it's complete ignorance on my part, but that is my understanding. So compare and contrast overseas versus American, and then just take the floor and tell us what you know.
So there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
I'll kind of start at the cost side because that is the most common fallacy that I hear. So most people, when they repeat, it's more expensive in the US, it's cheap in Asia, this is the way it is, are operating off of things that they were told or learned 25 to 30 years ago. What's happened is the advent of technology, automation, the increase in fuel prices have made it fiscally viable and frankly, oftentimes cheaper to manufacture in the US. I have a bias. I'm the first one to acknowledge I am biased that American manufacturing can be cheaper than Chinese manufacturing. So let's remove me from the conversation there. Foxconn, who is one manufacturer, they are building a plant in Ohio. They actually just bought an auto plant in Ohio to build parts for Fisker motor cars for EVs. So you've got the experts of Chinese manufacturing. These are the gods. They make the iPhone. And they have figured it out. So we've got to break that stigma because it's ingrained in us, especially if you're not around the manufacturing industry. We were told it because it was true. Before the technological advancements in the last 20 years, 20 years ago, you didn't have a cell phone in your pocket. You couldn't know every piece of information in the world in 3 clicks. People don't connect that to the manufacturing industry.
Right.
For some reason, there's this mental block that it hasn't changed. That it's still Charles Dickens with dirt floors and Tiny Tim putting his hand into a machine. Like there's a fallacy built in there. So that is one of the big opportunities that we found with the private equity fund is you've got these great companies, production's coming back to the US in folds, and it's not only American companies that are coming in. You get throughout the world, people are like, we're building, let's build some American manufacturing plants. That sounds good. And then add in the fact that fuel prices are they're skyrocketing, and this last large increase isn't the only one. I mean, they've been consistently going up for years. So that balance is going. And frankly, America consumes a lot of products, and American products are wanted throughout the world. So that market is growing, but technological advancements and advancements in process and how we treat people and how we develop these businesses is what's led it to no longer being true that other markets are cheaper.
Well, that's a really good point that I hadn't thought of. And yeah, I totally fall into that camp where it's like, it seems like all industries are progressing minus manufacturing. And it's not that it was a conscious thought of mine, but it's just kind of an out of sight, out of mind. I assume that it just kind of continued like factories are factories. And yes, now there's some automation involved. And now we've got robot arms that help out. And, that's the extent of my understanding. And that's really cool. So what does that do for us as Americans having more American factories? I mean, I would assume it stimulates the economy. Beyond that, what's the advantage of all of this?
So there's a couple things. First off, with MRCA, one of our primary goals is to protect the local communities that manufacturing companies exist, because these are very special communities. These manufacturing companies are huge parts of them, and we want to make sure we protect that. As far as even to the point that when we liquidate the fund, we're liquidating through an employee stock ownership program to give 100% of the shares to the employees. But why is manufacturing special and more important than just economies or anything else? Name one other industry that almost every company in the industry you can walk in with no formal education. They will pay you while they train you on the job and will continue to promote you and bring you higher and higher in the organization and making very good livings like manufacturing. There just isn't. So if you want something that's really has the ability to pull up a society and strengthen it, this is the bazooka of an economy. You can just strengthen the living heck out of it all. And the cool thing about manufacturing is manufacturing provides more manufacturing. So if you're making this component, that person makes this component, they assemble them here and they sell them to somebody else, that progresses. So frankly, if you look at every country who has grown and taken over as world power and become a very good, solid country, they all did it on the back of manufacturing. We talk industrial revolution. We talk China's growth was on the back of manufacturing. It is a tool to strengthen things because it is the core of our communities and everything we use.
Yeah, I mean, it all starts there. And it is really interesting, this concept that you just mentioned of manufacturing leads to more manufacturing. And it's this idea that creation leads to more creation. I'll use my own example of it, and it has nothing to do with manufacturing, but it makes me think about this. I think there's a parallel here, and it's the idea of for me, trying to create content to push my personal brand and everything that I'm doing. And there's this this thing, if you're at the beginning of that journey, where it's like, all right, well, I only know so much. So how much content can I really make? I'm supposed to be posting X amount of times a day on how many different social media? If I have any chance of being successful, all of that stuff. And you're like, crap, I don't know that I can do any of this. And what I have found to be true in my life, and seems to be true anybody else that creates content using this example, is the more content you create, the more you come up with. And you're never going to get to the end of your idea bucket, so to speak. Like the more that you are willing to pull out of that idea bucket and then share it with the world, more comes in. And then before you realize it, like in that example, you start getting feedback from people because you're building an audience and they're interested in what you have to say. And so now they have their own ideas and stuff that they want to, push past you, and questions piggybacking off of that, which turns into more content, more ideas, more growth, creation. The more you create, the more can be created. It's just kind of an interesting thing. I know that's kind of like a weird way to say it, but I never really thought about that in the manufacturing side of things. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's so I've explained to people oftentimes as marathon runners. So marathon runners have this thing called the wall. And it's when you're running and you just don't want to anymore. It's over. Games, we do not want to play this marathon anymore. It sucks. And every single marathon runner knows what happens next if you push through.
Right.
You get to runner's high. And suddenly the world is just moving at pace. And you got it. I can do 2 more marathons if I need to now. Well, that's any industry. Manufacturing is just the same, but it's almost on steroids, because as soon as you're making the product, there's someone else there to consume it. And then, you're giving this job to make the product. So this person takes home money, and guess what? They go buy a product that the next guy's making. And that's all they do. They just keep on buying each other's products. And suddenly you're in this runner's high where the whole thing is just clicking on all cylinders. Everyone's like, oh, wow. Like everybody's income's coming up. We're living better lives. We're getting to do more things. And you're like, yes, because it feeds itself. And that is what's super, super important. Yes. And that's things and that's why you see great economic powerhouses are almost always built on the back of manufacturing.
I want to have you unpack something else that you'd mentioned earlier. And it's more so kind of the initiative of what MRCA is doing, and the idea of all of these workers, blood, sweat, and tears, and in many cases, years and years and years on these floors, providing for their families and doing their thing. You've hatched the plan, like we said in the bio, this idea of how to put the ownership back into these people's hands, and to really there's just more skin in the game. There's more ownership. There's more pride. There's more fulfillment and satisfaction and purpose, and all of these big words that are so integral to living a happy and full life. MRCA is aiming to do that. Tell us a little bit more about how that works. And it seems pretty revolutionary to me. Is this a common thing, or are you the only ones doing it, or just tell us all about that.
I'll kind of start from are we the only ones doing it? So when we announced that we were a private equity fund and that we were going to exit through an ESOP to the employees, and that our investors would make the biggest chunk of their profit on that exit, I legitimately had a couple other PE firms laugh. And then about a week later, call me back and go, I just got it. It works. I'm like, yeah, it does. I was like, and I don't take full credit for it. Our fund manager came up with the functionality of it. We knew we wanted to give something to the employees. We just didn't know the financial mechanism by which to do so. So now, since we've said that, a couple very, 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 very large PE firms have come out and said that they're going to do the same in smaller sectors of their business. So it is a viable model from the investor side. And that's something I like to hit on, because it is not purely altruistic. We have a job to make sure that everyone's taken care of. Beyond that, what we're doing is we've decided 100% of the shares of the entire national portfolio will go to the individual employees, not the individual company they work in. We are taking the entire thing and giving it to them. And the reason why that's important, and the ethos by which we design that on, it's about local communities. I love going to areas in the US that are just different than anything I've known, anything I've seen, anything I've been around. The difference between California Friday nights during high school football season and Texas Friday nights during high school football season. We were in a town the other day called Frog Lick. Like, they have a Frog Lick festival. Interesting place to be. So there's, yeah, but that's
welcome to America.
That is very important to our core. And what happens with a lot of manufacturing companies, and we've also heard this with the factory town. A company comes in, buys 5, 6, 7 manufacturing companies, jams them all together in a town, leaves it there for 20 years, doesn't really invest in that plant much more over the next 20, 25 years. The plant becomes too outdated. They shut it down, kill the town, and move it to somewhere else. We've heard this story over and over again, especially if you're up towards Detroit or anything like that. This is close to home. So we wanted to make sure that after we exit these manufacturing companies, the decision-making power is still in those local communities. They choose what's done with their factories, not some person sitting at a desk so far away that they don't even understand how this place functions. So by giving the entire national portfolio to the employee level, we protect those local communities.
That's huge. That is huge. Do you get a lot of thank you cards from people?
You get a lot of people believing it, thinking it's too good to be true.
Yeah.
A lot of people have heard promises like this that ended up being unfulfilled. And so there's an education of, hey, here's the reality of it is. That is why I'm always very clear about the fact that this is a strong play also on the investor side, because the first question everybody goes is, well, why would you give it away? And it's like, well, no, there's a functionality to the financial side of this that makes it make sense too.
Right.
But really, what we see is when we go to buy a company, the conversation's drastically different than when other people buy companies. I've actually been told by owners in the past that they accepted our offer, which was significantly lower than another offer, because we were going to take care of their people. And most of the owners that we buy companies from end up taking equity back into our fund.
Yeah.
Because these are people that have decided they want to retire, but they acknowledge all of the work that these employees have put in for 20, 30 years, and they want to make sure they're taken care of.
Yeah, well, and I'm sure that there's a lot of pressure on a business owner. I can imagine being in that position, and say you have 50, 200, the number is arbitrary, employees that have been, the blood, sweat, and tears for what you have built in this manufacturing plant, what you guys do. And yeah, now I'm old and I'm ready to move on. I'm just tired. And but what does that do for almost what feels kind of like my kids in a sense? I'm responsible for them. I don't want to throw them to the wolves. I don't want a big nameless, faceless corporation to come in and, not only likely poorly treat the people that are here, probably run the company a completely different direction. And if they, like you were saying before, if they choose to just go somewhere else, they up and leave. Well, now it could kill this little town that, everybody, had grown to love. That was, this manufacturing company was the backbone for a lot of the people in that community. I can imagine that there's a lot of internal and emotional struggle for an owner operator at that level when they're trying to decide how to navigate that.
Yeah, and I'll even put a cherry on top of that. Most legacy manufacturing companies, the name on the side of the building is the founder's last name. They don't want their name still there while people are being mistreated. They've built it. I mean, think of how resilient just in the last 2 decades these owners are. In the last 2 decades, they've had the .com crash. They've had 9/11. They've had the 2008 crash. They had COVID. I mean, this is in the last 2 decades. Some of these companies are 7,500 years old. They've made it through everything. They don't want to see somebody come in and destroy it. So that is a core chunk of this is how do you really take care of companies that are truly the backbone of the United States?
Yeah, entirely. And there's a phrase that you use that I want to ask you about, and if this applies here, and it's just the idea of revitalizing manufacturing. What does that mean to you? And is this part of that?
Yes. So I hate the term save jobs. Okay. And here's why. Blacksmiths should not have jobs today. That is a reality. Saving a job is not the core importance. Revitalizing a person's job or a person's skill sets or a company, that is important. That is the growth. That's the forward movement. I would like my employees to continually revitalize so their jobs are safer, they're easier on their bodies, they're getting paid more, they're more effective, they're more fulfilled, they're more happy. But the only way you can do that is to revitalize them, add life back into it. So that is why it's so important in what we do. That the term is revitalization. This is not saving things that should not exist. You're taking the blacksmith and you teach him how to run a sheet metal press. Hey, same skill set. You still understand the metalworking and all that, but we're going to get you to a point that it's safer and it's better and it matches the current economy. So that is what we mean by the revitalization. Well, the other part of that is if I can revitalize a person, okay, I take somebody who's been doing a job that's hard on their body for 30 years and they come home exhausted and they come home not making very much money and they're grumpy. They go home, they sit in their lazy boy, watch TV, wake up at 5 a.m. the next day, go back, they do the job, they go home, they're grumpy, they sit on the lazy boy, crack a beer, do it over and over again. Or I can take that same person, revitalize their skill sets, get them some more money, make sure when they go home, they feel fulfilled, they've got energy, they've got love to give to their families and their neighbors. What happens to their entire community? We revitalize the entire community. We've all seen the movies of those factory towns that are just dingy and like, oh yeah, I'll diss it. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. I'm fortunate enough that some very early Tesla people work on my teams. And the energy that they have coming out of that, because they knew they were changing the world and they were doing it in a special way. So that is what revitalization is.
So it's really, I mean, because we were talking about this earlier with the systems and optimizing and how can we make it easier to accomplish X, Y, and Z and reach our goals as a business. Mm-hmm. That's part of it. But then there's also the individual. There's the community that they're involved in. And I mean, even just to repeat again, the individual, because the sense of purpose and fulfillment that you can find and realize it, you start to have this, you go through this healthy self-discovery process. And that not only affects the individual, but everybody else around. It's that butterfly effect, and it is a compounding effect at that. So revitalizing manufacturing goes way beyond the idea of or the term manufacturing itself, and that's kind of the beauty of it. That's really cool. I love how you displayed that for us. So let me ask you this: is there any other question that I didn't ask you that you'd like to touch on? Because I've got some fun questions for us that we're going to rapid fire here shortly. But I absolutely want to make sure that you have the opportunity to just share what's been on your mind, any thoughts, takeaways, wrap up points. The floor is yours, and then we'll pivot into some fun stuff.
The only one we offer to everybody, go to mrca.net. You've got a way on there to actually get a direct meeting with me. We are all about sharing information and talking to people. If you're interested in investing with us, it's also there. if you want to just know what random stuff we're doing, check out our LinkedIn, our socials. We've got a ton of stuff on there on, hey, we thought this is cool. That's weird. What's going on? So there's just a constant stream of what's going through people within our organization's minds.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I will be sure to link all of that stuff in the show notes or the description, whatever we want to call it. But audience, it's all there for you. And you could link up with Jason and his team and the company and what they're doing. It's big things. But Jason, let's talk about you for a second. Question number 1, what's your favorite thing you own and why?
I'm not one that likes to own things all that much. So I've got a bunch of animals. I just love animals. And we're not talking normal animals. I like farm animals. So that's my go-to.
Yeah, you're on the ranch. Tell us a couple of the animals that you have right now.
We've got horses, pigs, donkeys, goats, dogs, chickens. We're about to have a bunch of baby pigs coming out. They're all little minis, so they're like that big. Yeah, it's real cute.
Dude, that's cool. Yeah. Oh, that keeps life exciting for sure. As if you weren't busy enough, right? All right, question 2. If you were to write a book tomorrow, what would it be about, and what would you title it? No wrong answers.
There is actually one in the works right now, but it's too stupid to say no, or just smart enough to make it work. And I think one of the things a lot of people forget as they become entrepreneurs is that ignorance early on is helpful, because it makes you ask questions that once you've been doing it too long, you get, oh no, this is the way we do it. So just really that concept of stay in it and just stay kind of the learner is super important.
Oh, I love that. That's a great answer. And that's a real thing that you're working on too, right? You said?
It has been in the works.
Okay, cool. Do you have are you allowed to share what you're aiming for as far as launch or when this could potentially be public?
Oh, no. We're probably talking a couple years.
There we go. Cool. Well, good. Well, we've got a couple years to continue to build up the appetite for it. And that'll be a good one. So question 3, if you couldn't have this career, what would be your dream job or career? If you couldn't do what you do now?
It's an interesting one because I've actually never done anything else in my life. I started the first one when I was 15. Honestly, I think I'd go into ranching or farming. I really like that entire world.
Cool. That's awesome. Well, and you can get to kind of do it a little bit. You're having your cake and eat it too. That's a good call. Number 4, favorite emoji. What's your favorite emoji?
I don't know the last time I used an emoji.
Really? You're a non-emoji user. Well, this is breaking news here, Jason.
I still type semicolon parenthesis when I do a smiley face. So.
Is there an emoji that you get sent a lot that you're just really confused by? Because, I mean, we all have heavy emoji users in our life, whether we are one or not.
I get a lot of little little chicken or a little animal, and it's usually, hey, this animal caused trouble. So I guess those are my most used.
There you go. I like it. Pivoting into something else that I believe you're into, myself as well. You're a whiskey guy, from what I understand, at least to a degree. What's your go-to choice right now? What's your go-to sipper?
So that gets complicated. So my go-to, if I'm just drinking whiskey, is going to be a Bullet Rye. It's good whiskey you can get just about anywhere. And I'm blanking on the name right now, but the other go-to has been Whistle Pig lately. So I'll go with Whistle Pig.
Yeah, man. Those are both great answers, and I enjoy them both. I will say that Bullet Rye is something I frequent a little bit more, just because I think it's just more so the price point. What I have found is because I really got I went into the deep end, and I was getting the $85 bottles and stuff, and I loved it. I was like, I'm going to build this collection. It's going to look cool. I'm going to keep it in my office and all that, which is probably a bad idea, but outside of the money spending itself. But then I realized what happens when I buy a nice bottle of whiskey is I drink it. And then I don't have it. And now I'm out the money too. So it's like my fun thing is trying to find the best inexpensive stuff because I can share it, I can sip it, I can frequent that decanter that it's in. Like a Wild Turkey 101 is really good for me. Or like Old Forester 86.
So we did a blind testing out at my house. And my wife set it up. It was beautiful. Like right as the sunset's coming over the ranch, and I've got all of these whiskeys lined up. Okay, and there's some whiskey drinkers on my team that was there, and they go and we're trying it out, and everybody's going, and everyone knows their favorite whiskey.
Right.
So they go all through everything. They're just unanimously picked the same one. And it was Elijah Craig.
Yes. I love Elijah Craig.
And in there was Angel's Envy. There was Gibson's out of Canada. We had some high-end stuff in there, and Elijah Craig won.
It's good.
Everyone just like, it's the original bourbon.
Yeah. It's funny how that works out. It is interesting, but yeah, it is so fun. And I'm pulling us off of our rapid fire questions here, but I enjoyed talking bourbon and, sipping it, of course. And just like, especially even when you're comparing, something that's higher end versus not so higher end, I guess. And I'm more so from price point is what I mean by that. And then you're like, oh yeah, the cheaper one is the one that I like the most. And it's like, sweet. Freaking awesome.
It's always the best when you find that out. You're like, yes, it's cheap now.
Yeah, exactly. So not trying to invite myself over, but let me know next time you guys are doing a tasting.
Always welcome.
Yeah, man, that sounds good.
Everyone's always welcome out here.
That sounds good to me. Here, I've got 2 more questions for you, and then we'll put a bow on this thing today. If you had to eat one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Teriyaki chicken and rice.
Oh, we're becoming friends as the moments go by here. Yeah, that sounds great. You didn't even hesitate.
It's not a question. I used to have this little place at the end of my block that served it for $3.99, and I would walk in and I didn't even have to order. I just put a $5 down and walk away.
They knew what you wanted. They saw you coming. That's awesome. Very good. Last question. What will your life look like in 12 months from now? Outside of work, within work, where are you going to be in 12 months?
Well, we will be mid-acquisition cycle for the fund. So I will be somewhere in the U.S., most likely in a very small town.
Awesome. And those little pigs that are on their way, they'll be bigger pigs.
They will be bigger pigs. We should have a litter of 12 coming right now. So,
wow.
Yeah.
It's a lot of bacon, man. Or am I allowed to say that? Yeah. Sometimes that rubs people the wrong way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough. Oh man. Well, I'm looking at the clock here and I promised you an hour and I have taken an extra 9 minutes from you already. So Jason, thank you for being here, taking some time out of a nice Friday afternoon here to be with me and the audience here on the Which Way Now podcast. Your story's awesome. I'm going to link up everything in the show notes that you had suggested so that people can connect with you and follow along with your story and potentially even reach out to do business with you if that's an opportunity for them that they're interested in. But, we talked about a lot, the processes and systems and seeing how we can optimize not only the work that we do, but even internally in our lives and our outlook on things and sharing sometimes what seems like a trade secret that should be kept to itself. Maybe it's a good idea to create community out of sharing that with people and it blossoms into this beautiful community. And you're doing that in the way with MRCA, with the company of giving the money back to the people, so to speak, and empowering them to live a richer, fuller life inside and outside of the office. You're a good dude. You represent a great cause. And I appreciate your time, Jason. This was good.
Oh, thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for listening, all the audience out there. If you could leave a like, a review, a rating, wherever you're at on this, I appreciate it. Jason will appreciate it. And until next time, Keep on working on yourself, and we're all going to grow together. Peace out. Well, that does it for this episode. You can always reach out to me directly on my Instagram at Evan Shank 75 with any thoughts or questions you may have. I'd love to connect and hear your story. Make sure you follow and subscribe, and also leave a review on whichever platform you're listening to this on. My only question to you is, which way now?